You are standing in the shadows of Greenwich Palace on a sweltering July morning in 1588. The air hangs thick with a mixture of unwashed bodies, the rot of old rushes on the floor, and the faint, cloying perfume of courtiers trying desperately to mask the decay beneath. Through the heavy wooden doors, the rustle of silk and murmured voices signals the presence of Queen Elizabeth I herself. She sits enthroned, draped in golden pearls and silks, her pale face painted white as fresh snow. Courtiers lean forward, not merely in reverence, but because her words, distant yet commanding, are somehow easier to endure from afar. Here is Gloriana, the woman who defeated the Spanish Armada, who ruled England with iron precision, but the polished surface hides habits that would make a modern observer recoil. Elizabeth's approach to bathing was as theatrical as it was shocking. By her own words, she bathed once every 3 months. Whether she needed it or not, this schedule was considered progressive by contemporary standards, though it seems barbaric now. Servants would haul enormous copper tubs into her private chambers, filling them with water heated over massive kitchen fires. This water, drawn from the Thames, was far from pure. Brown, thick, and contaminated with sewage, dead animals, and industrial runoff, it was hardly fit for cleansing. Soap, if it could be called that, was a crude mixture of animal fat, wood ash, and lye, a concoction more likely to strip flesh than remove grime. Over the course of 90 days, Elizabeth's body accumulated layers of sweat, dead skin, and the various oils, powders, and perfumes she applied to mask her natural scent. By the time her quarterly bath arrived, courtiers could identify her presence long before she entered the room. A letter from the French ambassador in 1579 recounts holding a pomander of sweet herbs to his nose during an audience, describing the ordeal as a trial of endurance. At a formal dinner, his wife fainted, not from heat, as the court claimed, but from the overpowering odours that emanated from the royal table. The Queen's teeth were another source of fascination and horror. By her 40s, they had turned black from decay, a consequence of her unquenchable appetite for sugar, a commodity more expensive than gold. Marchpane, candied fruits, sugared violets, and sweet wines coated her teeth in sugar for hours each day. No brushing, no flossing, only occasional rinsing with wine or rose water, which worsened decay. By the 1590s, her teeth crumbled under her bite, and her breath became legendary among courtiers and foreign ambassadors alike. Venetian diplomats wrote of the smell as forcing them to breathe through their mouths, a polite attempt to avoid fainting. Pain was constant. Days were spent on broths and liquid medicines when chewing became unbearable. Even in these intimate, private horrors, Elizabeth's brilliance as a ruler shone through. The hygienic grotesqueries of her daily life were inseparable from the pressures of monarchy, the politics of image, and the societal ignorance of medicine and sanitation. To understand Elizabeth's world is to grasp the precarious balance between survival, spectacle, and control. Each layer of grime, each decayed tooth, each unwashed garment tells a story of a queen negotiating power in a society that demanded perfection but offered no guidance on the human body's realities. The stage is set, the characters present, and the smell of history, both literal and figurative, hangs thick in the air. In this world, Elizabeth Tudor's reign is a dazzling, terrifying paradox. A queen who commanded nations while battling decay beneath the surface. Elizabeth Tudor's battle with hygiene extended far beyond baths and teeth. By her 30s, her famous red hair had largely vanished, hidden beneath elaborate wigs that became themselves symbols of both vanity and decay. The loss of her natural hair was partly due to the lead-based cosmetics she applied to achieve her iconic pale complexion, and partly from countless home remedies meant to restore her tresses. Wigs were sourced from peasant women, often sold in desperation and delivered in unsanitary conditions, carrying lice and dirt that would fester beneath silk or linen bases. Servants spent hours each day removing lice, yet the parasites always returned, thriving in the warm, moist environment. The wigs, once a crown of beauty, became a vehicle for chronic infection, scalp sores, and a distinctive odor that announced the Queen's presence long before she arrived. Lead-based makeup, known as ceruse, was a poison masquerading as beauty. Every morning, Elizabeth applied layers of white lead mixed with vinegar, using animal hairbrushes, allowing it to set for an hour while her skin burned and eyes watered. The mask created a smooth, flawless facade, yet beneath it her flesh was being systematically destroyed. Over time, the accumulation of ceruse cracked, flaked, and required constant touch-ups, building a thick, toxic layer over already damaged skin. Lead poisoning spread through her entire body, causing fatigue, memory lapses, hair loss, and worsening dental decay. The Queen's vanity, ironically, was entwined with her slow self-destruction, a daily ritual of artistry and agony. Her wardrobe mirrored the same obsessive care mixed with negligence. Elizabeth owned over 3,000 gowns made from silks, velvets, and brocades, adorned with pearls and precious stones. Yet these masterpieces were rarely cleaned. Layers of sweat, body oils, and filth accumulated over days or weeks, with perfumes applied in an attempt to mask the odors, though often worsening the stench. The weight of the gowns, sometimes exceeding 50 pounds when fully jeweled, trapped heat and moisture, creating a greenhouse for bacteria. Tight corsets and multiple undergarments pressed against her body, further complicating hygiene, digestion, and circulation. Even her stockings and shoes, made from fine wool and silk, became breeding grounds for fungal infections, sweat, and odor, often causing physical pain and visible deformities in her feet. Oral hygiene fared no better. Her rotting teeth and constant bacterial buildup created breath that was overpowering, prompting desperate attempts at masking it with perfumed powders, sweet wines, and herbs. These measures were at best temporary solutions. At worst, they created new layers of rot and chemical reaction. Perfumes themselves, though luxuriously imported, combined with natural body odors to produce scents so foul that courtiers compared them to a rose garden built atop a cesspit. Her favorite civet musk added animalistic notes, and the repeated layering of fragrances throughout the day made her presence simultaneously alluring and repellent. The Queen's diet and digestive system compounded these problems. Rich meats, heavily spiced sauces, and sugary confections, consumed hastily between official duties, created bloating, gas, and discomfort that had to be discreetly managed behind the curtain of court etiquette. Corsets pressed against her stomach, amplifying pain and making public appearances a delicate balancing act between composure and physical misery. Mercury and other toxic remedies prescribed for illnesses added another layer of digestive chaos, creating severe diarrhea, nausea, and a lingering metallic taste that worsened oral conditions. Elizabeth Tudor's personal hygiene was thus a constant paradox, a meticulous obsession with appearance intertwined with shocking neglect of the body's natural needs. Each layer of paint, each jeweled gown, each wig or perfume cloud was both shield and prison, masking decay while amplifying suffering. In this world, beauty, power, and hygiene were inseparably tangled, leaving the Queen to navigate a reign where appearance could save a nation, even as it slowly destroyed the woman beneath. By the time Elizabeth entered the final decades of her life, the cumulative horrors of her hygiene neglect had reached extremes few could imagine. Her feet, hidden beneath silk stockings and ornate shoes, were among the most neglected parts of her body. Fungus and infections thrived in the warm, damp environment of her footwear, while toenails grew thick, yellowed, and curled painfully into the skin. Each step became a subtle act of endurance, a private agony masked by poise and regal bearing. Servants carefully trimmed nails when possible, but cuts often became infected, spreading decay and creating a pungent odor that lingered long after the queen had passed by. Courtiers learned to recognize her approach not only by her presence, but by the distinctive scent emanating from her lower extremities, a smell that haunted palace corridors. Her sleeping chambers, meant to be sanctuaries of rest, were repositories of decades of accumulated filth. The royal bed, a masterpiece of oak and cloth of gold, contained linens stiffened with dried sweat, urine, and residues of medicinal ointments. Feathers from the mattress absorbed moisture and odor, becoming a breeding ground for insects and bacteria. Nightgowns, rarely changed, became second skins, yellowed and crusted with bodily fluids. The room itself, tightly closed to conserve heat, trapped all odors, creating an atmosphere that could overwhelm even the hardiest servant upon entry. Perfumes and incense, once meant to mask filth, were no match for years of neglect. The air was thick with a nauseating blend of sweat, infection, and rancid scent. Elizabeth's physical decay mirrored her mental decline. Lead poisoning, chronic infections, poor diet, and decades of unwashed clothing and hair had transformed the once formidable queen into a fragile, unpredictable figure. Memory lapses, mood swings, and bursts of irrational anger became increasingly common, complicating court life and increasing the burden on those who served her. She scratched at sores and lesions, sometimes drawing blood during public appearances, the pain etched visibly across her face, though always hidden beneath layers of makeup. Speaking and eating became acts of careful negotiation. Her remaining teeth were loose, her gums inflamed, and her mouth a permanent repository of infection and decay. As she aged, her body odor reached near supernatural intensity. Combinations of rotting teeth, unwashed hair and clothing, infected wounds and rancid perfumes created an olfactory presence described by courtiers as the scent of death itself. Even after leaving rooms, the lingering stench forced servants to open windows and burn incense, desperate to reclaim air made unbreathable by the Queen's proximity. Ambassadors occasionally commented on the strange, pervasive odors near her throne, unaware they were encountering the cumulative effects of decades of bodily neglect. On March 24, 1603, Elizabeth Tudor passed away at Richmond Palace. In death, the full extent of her hygiene catastrophes became impossible to conceal. Servants preparing her body for burial found a woman almost unrecognizable from the portraits that had adorned courts and palaces for decades. Rooms where she had lived remained saturated with distinctive odors for months, some areas so contaminated they were abandoned or sealed off entirely. Her reign, so full of political triumphs and public grandeur, had been conducted atop layers of decay, both literal and symbolic. The shadows of Greenwich Palace now feel different. The air cleared by carefully tended gardens, yet the echoes of Elizabeth's life linger in history's record. She was a queen who commanded armies, courted nations, and survived political storms, yet her greatest adversary was not a foreign power. It was the mirror reflecting the cost of denying the human body's most basic needs. Elizabeth Tudor died wedded not to England, but to her own decay, leaving behind a kingdom forced to reckon with the stark, unvarnished truths of her 45-year reign. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the hidden realities of history. If you found this story as fascinating and as shocking as we did, please give this video a like to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the secrets of the past. We'd also love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from, or share your thoughts on Elizabeth Tudor's incredible and unsettling life. Every click, comment, and subscription helps us continue uncovering the stories history didn't want you to see. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next story.